I guess I'll start and just present some context. I wanted to talk about the path to membership, a little bit about Lang Team, how we run the team, and two main things. The idea of path to membership, which I think we've never really, which I think we could do well to articulate. But part of the reason I'm bringing up path to membership is that I think looking over basically, I think we need more people. I think our bandwidth is relatively constrained, and it's good for us to be thinking about how we can grow this group uh, and do so in a good way. And I think it's a difficult thing for us to do because we've got a hard job to be involved in design discussions and combine like technical knowledge, design taste, but also constructively engaging and listening and so forth. And one of the things I'm observing as we go through the major change process, trial run, let's call it, is that, you know, I had hoped that we would do a good job of promptly responding to people. I think we've done not as good a job as I might have liked. But also it's sort of exposing, like, as expected, that there are some ideas I think are good, but we just don't have, if we had a bigger team, I think we could easily carry them through, but instead we have a team of people who are all pretty full up, and that's okay. But it shows that we can't do a lot of things. That's my context, I guess. Thoughts and questions before I keep going? I don't want to just monologue. So, hearing none, I guess. In terms of path to membership, Josh and I had a conversation. I thought it was helpful. We had some pretty specific ideas that we were thinking. Oh yeah, I'm not sure this keyboard is loud, but which was that we could, like originally I had the idea that project groups themselves were a kind of path to membership because like leading a group is a good way to kind of show some of the skills we're looking for. And it gives us, I think what I've found is difficult in other, like with the old shepherding system we had, is that you might add someone, but it was sort of not clear what they were supposed to do and how long was that like trial period and what should we do at the end of it. So I prefer if we can find things where we give people we sort of put people in a position to do some work, and then when that work's done, that's sort of a natural endpoint, and maybe we choose to keep doing things, or maybe we just let it go if it doesn't seem like it's working out as well, and just don't take further steps. That will be better off. But one of the things is, so the thing about leading a project group is that it's only one side of it. And actually, I think I would, like in an ideal world, I think the way that the Lang team would be operating is that the members themselves, we are leading things, but we're also liaisoning for a larger set of things where the leadership is coming from people who are motivated in the community at large who just want to see a particular feature through. And so we're not getting any, like we're not have a way to like trial run that side of it, right? And that's also the bit of bandwidth I think is most constrained. We were thinking that it'd be interesting if we sort of said, if we see people who we think are like been engaging a lot and are promising or whatever, maybe we can, instead of saying the liaison always has to be a team member, maybe the idea of the liaison is that it should just be, it's someone whose job it is to work with the project and regularly update the team at triage meetings or you know, in advance of them, but not necessarily on the team. And if they're not doing if that's not happening, that's a problem. But and in that way, we could sort of say, okay, we're gonna let, like there might be some promising candidates, and we'll try to encourage them to liaison some projects, right? And then that kind of suggests that maybe we could say the path to membership is actually a kind of set of things that we want people to do, like a Lang team member, will have typically run one or more project groups as a lead, liaisoned one or more project groups, um, and participate regularly in either triage or we can kind of decide what exactly, but participate regularly in meetings or in some fashion. I'm a little bit skeptical about that only because the reason I'm being a little hesitant there is that I think meetings, it works well for us, but I would like to find ways to accommodate people that, for whatever reason, can't participate in Zoom meetings. I don't want to make that to be a hard requirement. But what this then also looks like is it kind of looks like a good list, the start point of a list of what is the expectations that if you're a team member, what does that mean that you should be doing? Because that's something else we've not been extremely clear on. And so
That
I
makes
guess
good sense.
to finish up, it's kind of like, yeah, if we had a kind of list and we could then identify candidates and say like, hey, we think we saw you did this and it was really cool and we've been enjoying your participation in the meetings. Maybe you'd like to take on one of these other duties. Like if you're interested in joining the Lang team, or even if you're not, but if you are in particular, here's the kind of things you need to do. And we would like to see this and this. And then when we get the full set, we can make a decision. And, sometimes we might decide not to offer someone a spot, and sometimes we might decide to do so, and that's difficult. But that has to be done eventually. Like we can't have members without also sometimes not having people join. But
It also seems worth highlighting here that this is a way to take someone who has demonstrated some experience and good judgment on, say, their own project or a project they deeply care about, and give them an opportunity to serve as the liaison for a project that they still care about, but isn't their own pet project, their own passion to get into the language and compiler. And because of that, that helps us evaluate, okay, this person is willing to do work on other people's projects to enable others to work well with others on different topics. And that's a skill we need to specifically select for, or we won't get it. It would be easy to find people who care about their own specific topics and little else, or don't have the bandwidth to do other things. We need to find people who have both the temperament and the desire and the ability to drive other things and help enable other people.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's this other concept that's been kicking around in my head that I want to bring up around. At some point, I'm trying to find the blog post and I can't. But Manish wrote a blog post about, I think he called it facilitators. And the idea was that we should have somebody who is sort of moderating, especially complex, like especially controversial topics. We should have a designated facilitator that their role is not to advocate for one position or the other, but just to kind of facilitate the discussion, do summaries and so forth, and moderate. I think to some extent. I mean, you could debate what exactly that means. But I envision it meaning that they have the power to tell people, sorry, that question, like, that's been resolved. You can't bring that up anymore. But in order to have legitimacy, it helps if they are not themselves advocating for one position or another, right? And that got me to thinking that maybe the way we've been thinking of liaison might, like, I've been saying the job of a liaison is kind of like a lead, but distinction is like not super clear. But maybe it would be nice if we said every group has a lead and they are a partisan in some sense, like they're pushing the design and they have a stake, but also a facilitator who has the job of like summarizing and tracking, but is requested to not have a stake. Like they may have an opinion, but they should try to pick issues that they don't think they will care that much about and stay out of it, and certainly not express it. It seems appealing to me because it also gets at this point of like, if we're looking for the ability to work on things that aren't your own passion, and we say, well, that means you should do one or two of these roles where or that's the job, then that's sort of clear. But that said, I think, no, putting that out there, it's kicking around in my brain.
I do think that requirement is one we might want to be careful about because it seems reasonable to have someone who is helping to apply good taste and design sense, or somebody who's helping to define or remind people of the requirements for a given solution. It's more that I don't think we would want somebody who already has a solution and a specific solution in mind from the outset and is pushing that over other things that might also meet some of the same requirements or all of the same requirements.
Yeah.
I think we may have to play that one by ear.
Well, I think that's right. I go back and forth on this. I think that's right. And maybe the facilitator is just a separate role that maybe we don't even have it all the time. Like maybe it's not necessary for all projects. But like a project that maybe it's risky to bring up specific projects, but one that I'm looking at our current list of MCPs, and I think one of them, there's this, for example, there's the current MCP around macro, extending macros to support like $#foo, or I forget what they call it, but some way to get the number of expansions, right?
Repetitions.
Yeah,
Pretty precise. Yeah.
And that doesn't strike me as like a super controversial topic. Like maybe people don't want it, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I don't think it's going to spark off into some firestorm. And it seems to me like a good role for a liaison there might just be to, a good choice would be someone who has used macros a lot, has some, can help identify missing use cases and round out the design. And in contrast, I don't know, we have the SIMD one is, I think, where there has been more controversy in the past. Obviously, like async or something like question mark, if we had a group around that, would be a case where there is a lot of controversy.
In particular, I'm guessing that when there's more controversy, then there's more of a need for an unbiased facilitator to actually properly summarize all points of view, right? That's, at least in my thinking, why you need.
Yeah.
That's where the unbiasedness comes into play, is when there's controversy.
Right. So maybe it's not something that we need to do up front. Like, I could see saying, well, everyone should have both one or more leads and a liaison, and maybe, and a facilitator, let's say. But that just requires more people to be participating, and maybe it's like some things don't happen because we can't find a facilitator, but they would never be a facilitator anyway.
I mean, my personal guess is that more controversy usually as a prerequisite requires there to be more people there in the first place. So we could just say the prerequisite is if there are more people, then there should be a facilitator, right? Like we should have some threshold where we expect there to be a facilitator if there's this many people participating in the discussion. Then it's not a matter of evaluating was there controversy or not. It's just a matter of there's a certain volume of content being produced that needs to be summarized by someone.
If we get down to a more, if it comes to be the case that RFCs are more purposeful also, like they're coming out of project groups and we can sort of predict them, it also seems plausible that facilitator might be like a role that we just say every RFC has a designated facilitator, and it's just kind of independent. It's not tied to the project group. I don't know. It's just a thought. What would be, so I wrote, can we talk a little bit more about meetings and expectations maybe? Remember, coming back to one facilitator thing. I would be interested to see if we can kind of draft what the actual statement.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Nico?
It's like the bullet you have in the summer, like in particular, are you referring to the list of sort of I wouldn't call them bullets, but I guess question marked items in the summary on the issue for this meeting. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So I guess it depends which way we frame it, but that's what I'm referring to. If we were to say, what are the expectations for a Lang team member? This is what I had before, right? And I think you could turn those into expectations if you did something like serve as project group lead where appropriate, liaison for projects. I don't know, not very informative, but basically saying we expect you to do some of those things. But do we really? I don't know what I'm. Can we say how often? Is that useful? Basically, I'm wondering if we can sharpen this to be more. Like, well, let's start with this. Do we think it's important that people participate in the triage meeting? Or design meetings? And kind of if they're not doing that, then well, there's also, what else is there? There's like participate in RFC discussion and other.
Did someone else just get massive static?
All of a sudden,
Yeah, I got some big static. I don't know where it came from.
you're better now. Go on, Scott.
I was just commenting on static as well. Well, since there's a bit of a pause, I will say I do like the idea of here's a list of things you should be doing. Even just for me to go, hey, I should probably be doing more than I often feel like I should be doing more than I am. And having a list of things like I should find one of those things to go do would be kind of nice.
Yeah, I can see that. Are there other things that we would put in here? Like, I think there is some expectation at this point that people will I don't know what the expectation is around Zulip.
I think there is one other regular expectation here. If it, sorry, where is the document that you're recording this in?
Oh,
It's in the paper that's linked on Zulip.
I pasted it on Zulip, ironically, but here it is in the Zoom chat.
Okay. I was going to suggest that processing or dealing with RFCs and other FCPs and consensus building polls in a reasonably timely fashion would be another expectation.
Yeah, actually, let me share this. I guess I might as well share this with the call too. Yeah, I have that on the list, which is probably why I mentioned it. I didn't say it out loud. So. This is what you're responding to FCP requests.
Yeah.
I think I would say more about participate in discussions. I think the expectation is that you will sort of help to drive discussions towards consensus, and especially, well, I don't know, but maybe especially de-escalate or something like that. I'm not sure. It's not. I think we do expect people to have opinions and make good designs too. Not consensus isn't the only important thing, and maybe that's wrong because like consensus of the thread is not our expectation or always achievable in any case. But I feel like there's some there's certainly a notion of participating constructively.
Hang on. Making it more about like making sure we have a common consensus understanding. We don't all have to agree, although when we can drive it in that direction, that's great. But this is more about things like making sure people agree what the points of view are, making sure that the understanding of people's requirements and expectations and interests are made clear. So that doesn't require forcing everybody to agree, as though anybody could do that on the internet. It's more a notion of you can disagree with somebody, but agree that they have accurately summarized your point of view and your requirements, and that it's more a matter of here's our fundamental disagreement. How do we resolve that?
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's sort of there's kind of two things. You should both kind of help to provide the technical excellence and express your point of view, but also be trying to drive towards common understanding. Okay.
We should probably say something here explicitly that just because these are the expectations, that this does not mean we don't expect that people can take vacations, get busy for a while, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about is this sense of like, not everybody can do all of the things all the time, and we would like to accommodate different amounts of availability and again, strengths, right? Like, I kind of feel like it would be, well, I don't know, but I could imagine it being okay if somebody said, I don't do like RFC discussion. It's just not my thing. I leave that to other people, but what I do is like work on the detailed issues or work in a project group on something and iterate in that environment. And that seems like that seems okay. Maybe that's not. Maybe that doesn't. Maybe it's not okay. Maybe that's fine. You can do all those things. It's just not quite enough to be considered a LangTeam member. But
I think that would be fine as long as it's not hyper specialized. Like actively participating on a chunk of these things would be sufficient. But for example, only participating in discussions on this specific topic when they come up in project groups and nothing else. Like we're not seeking out people who are just representing one specific issue or topic and not a more generalist language design sense.
that seems right. I'm wondering though, on the same time, everybody does have their specialties. And I wonder, we've talked about like exposing our cues for how busy we are, and we've also talking about what kind of projects we ourselves would like to see and would like to work with, which we haven't really done a great job of advertising. But I guess on that latter point, like talking about what we each see as our specialties and expectations, like areas of where we have might be helpful to also to help us see what we're missing. Like I think we don't necessarily cover all the areas where we might. I think an obvious thing we don't have any expertise in is name resolution, or we don't have anyone who is super familiar with Rust's name resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard something in what Josh said that was interesting to me of like, what is the thing that makes someone who should be on the Lang team, and what is the special thing about Lang team membership versus other things? Like, is there a place for people who want to do project groups but have no interest in being on the Lang team, and what would that person look like versus, you know, like,
Yeah, like a
if the
Lang team
core
contributor, right?
if
Like
the core piece of Lang team membership is checking FCP boxes, what, like, is that the core piece? Is it something else? Is it like, is it a distributed sense, like, is it a distributed sense of good taste in some sense across enough people that we're happy that Rust stays in some direction, that that's the goal of it? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me like this gets to the heart of something, this idea of what is the core piece. Checking out the RFC checklist is certainly something that, considering that our model is basically that, you don't need total unanimous consensus, but you do need near that, right? Everyone but two, or whatever the current system is. And that's the biggest blocker I can think of in terms of the way a single member or small subset of members can block progress in something by just not making progress on the checkboxes. And I say this as somebody that has both failed to check off my box in a timely fashion and also done a blank check, or whatever you call it, a rubber stamp at times when necessary. So it's it seems like that's the big one that I can think of as like what defines the Lang team is in fact this thing that can cause blockage of progress, for better or for worse. Everything else, the leading project groups and liaison, those are great things that we sort of enable, but I don't see a reason for a Lang team member to be the lead or a project group. It just makes sense for them to do it at times. And then Nico's already brought up the idea that a liaison doesn't have to be a Lang team member, which would be an awesome thing for us to explore. Like all of these things are things that non-members can do. The only thing I can think of that has to be a Lang team member is the checkbox stuff, right?
I think that's certainly right in a technical sense, yeah.
I don't know if it's good, but it's
Yeah, I think it's a necessary but not sufficient condition, in that you certainly need to be doing that actively and participating in order to be, helping with language team activities and not being kind of a roadblock through inactivity. But I also think that there's a reasonable expectation of participating in some subset of the things listed above. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them. It doesn't mean you have to be most active on all of them, or to care about all of them equally. But I think there's some reasonable expectation that you're not just here to check boxes. And I don't think anybody here is, to be clear. We're trying to define expectations neutrally.
Right.
It's sort of like, in order that you should, like, I feel like in order to be qualified for check boxes, you probably need to participate.
Right. There's that too.
Well, yeah, we might be able to go backwards from box checking to some of the other things, like if having the critical part of box checking is having concerns, and the way through the critical part of being able to have a concern is being able to remove that concern, even if you still have that concern to some extent.
Or feed it back to the others in a way that where other people understand the concern and can change the design accordingly. Communication is, of course, the big thing here, and it's sort of underlying so much of these bullets is that the idea that we all have to be able to communicate with each other in a constructive fashion.
Right. I started sketching out the path to membership then, which I guess we can derive. And I mean, maybe it's just what I said before, which is fine. But like, typical, so we mentioned leading a project group. Leading, maybe, yeah, I think leading. Liaison, I was going to say, I wouldn't say it's like a strict requirement, but like heavy participation may be also good, similar to leading, but liaisoning for a group. And would we add also like participation in meetings, GitHub, participation in basically the above list minus responding to FCP requests. Kind of do, and maybe it's even that, like in terms of when an FCP request is given, you can imagine people giving their requests. But that's a pretty good list. It's already quite a bit more concrete than we ever had before.
Is there a way to make it concrete, the idea of, you know, demonstrating the capability to build consensus, or, you know, be part of a consensus building process? Because you know, there's a big difference between someone who is able to participate in a discussion, but it's still just, you know, acting as a roadblock, versus people who are able to, I don't know, find the appropriate, I don't want to say middle ground. Sometimes the middle ground isn't appropriate. Sometimes you need the extreme position to make sense, but it's
right.
To find somebody to communicate it that others can understand.
I would think that, well, this comes and touches back a little bit on this idea of having an official facilitator, but I would think that like this bullet is interesting because it does, like we could actually look for, we should be able to come up maybe with some examples of like where were comments or discussions where this person played that role, where they're like, doesn't, as you said, it doesn't mean they picked the middle ground, but that they tried to summarize both sides and explain why they prefer X in terms of this kind of way. Which comes to the reason I said it intersects the facilitator a little bit, is that if we had a role of facilitator and that was their job, was to summarize things, then it would be very clear. It'd be like, well, if you've served as facilitator, we should have some evidence. But it's a little bit different also, because then, I don't know.
I do like that direction, because I find it hard to say, oh yes, I helped build this consensus here, and point to something.
Yeah, I kind of want to circle back to that. Like, would it be so bad to have an official facilitator? Like, one of the things we've been talking about I've been talking about for meetings, for example, is that it would be nice if every meeting had a scribe who like wrote down, posted a blog, took the meeting, put it in GitHub, and posted a blog post after the meeting to say, here's what we talked about, right? If you had a facilitator for the project group and there was a project group meeting, like that could be part of their job, is to like, or the liaison's job is sort of to, I feel like one of the things we're not very good at, and we're getting worse in some ways, is ability for people to follow basically communication and transparency with the outside world, and making it somebody's job, but explicitly like that's their only job is to summarize things, makes it easy to see that they're doing it, and maybe helps it to happen. I don't know.
I mean, there's a quantum mechanics joke here of you can't really purely observe something without also affecting it. And I think the reverse is also true, that if you participate in it, even as a facilitator, you will develop some sort of like taste and positions. But
we take that part out where we say it's not your job. You don't have to pretend like you have no opinion. You just have to be able to, you know, like it's still your job to summarize both sides.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. I mean, the same way if you're the author of an RFC, then and with the traditional RFC process, you really want to summarize opposing positions, alternatives, and you want to do so fairly, not as a straw position. And that's the same expectation that we have for a liaison or facilitator.
And there's probably a good difference between, well, I don't really care, but I ended up with a weak opinion, and I came in wanting this and have a particular attachment to one side or the other.
Right.
One thing I will say is that I like this idea, and I don't quite know how it should exactly fit, but I am a little wary of like, we also don't want it to be, it's not the case that like everyone else gets to be extreme partisans because now we have an official facilitator who's like, in other words, I'm a little wary of, by making it so easy to like point out what the comment is where they wrote a summary, we shouldn't lose sight of the idea that also just in general, there's like a way, and maybe it is hard to come to these judgments and that's hard, but that's still important.
I think part of that might be that with project groups, we're not going to have most of the Lang team on any project group. So probably the people who are on that project group and actively pushing a particular whatever are going to be somewhat partisan necessarily.
Yes.
But that we will always have enough people who aren't on that to say, okay, I understand that that's the one that you're looking for, but.
Right. So
And
maybe
obviously partisanship isn't a reason to say, no, everyone else's opinion is terrible and shut them down, but.
So we can separate this out to some extent and say like, it's the job of the liaisons and leads to produce these sorts of comments, and maybe we can make scribes or something else to help. But the point is, when we're talking about membership, like in the course of doing these duties, we should have done this sort of thing, and we should be able to identify it. Does GitHub make it easy for us to like find it? No, probably not. We can come back to that.
Finding comments is never easy.
Yeah. I don't know that we have to get all like, send us 3 links of comments like this, but the point would be more that we can emphasize to people like, this is the kind of thing we're looking for.
Well, and if we set expectations ahead of time, then people can track their own, hey, I thought this was a good example of me doing blah, like people do at work of saving an email or whatever.
Yeah. And also I think if one thing we don't do much now, but I think we should be doing more of is talking amongst ourselves about like this, like I said, sort of steering people and saying, we've seen you're doing great work. Here's like, maybe you want to take on this job because that would help us to like evaluate you for membership. And at that point, we can start looking for this kind of. I have 2 different things I wanted to bring up. One of them, Felix, you said something about Lang team contributors, and I did want to wonder, I don't know if everyone knows, but the compiler team has 2 levels, like a contributor level and a full membership level. And the contributor level is plus, but not FCP.
Hold on, there's a lot of background noise. Can people not talking please mute themselves? It's like, in particular Scott and Josh, perhaps, because there's something that's making a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I actually can mute everyone. Let's see if I can. So in any case, there was one thing I was wondering about is there some notion that might be useful where we're saying, okay, well, this is our full set of expectations, but for people who are, actively doing a relatively narrow set, maybe we want a lower level or some way to recognize that and say, hey, now that you're here at at this role, I think it should come with some expectations. So like in the compiler team, you start to do reviews, but then this might be like, okay, well, like maybe all leads you could imagine, like they get added to like a leads set, and then those are people that were engaging more. I don't know exactly, but that might be a good idea. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is separate, is quality of service guarantees from the Lang team. By which I mean, how fast and how should we be responding to MCPs? One piece of feedback I got that stuck with me from Tyler Mandry was this idea of like, that there's just still this limbo state that's very confusing of like, it would be great if we could say like, we have a meeting every 2 weeks and you will get feedback of some kind after that meeting, you know, or something like that. It would be a lot more clear for people. And I don't know if that's something we should consider. I think meetings are hard. I would sort of rather if we can manage it more asynchronously. But at the same time, asynchronous decision making is hard.
But that's true though, like it's some sort of deadline of some form, or you know, some sort of way of queuing the stuff that's been unresponded to might help. Even driving an asynchronous discussion process.
You know, one thing I thought about doing was saying there's like a window. We have talked about auto closing. That was something we talked about, but never haven't implemented yet. But I was imagining like just having a bot that like, let's say the auto close window is 4 weeks, I don't know. And every week some bot drops a comment that says, it's week 1 of 4, there's been no comment. It's week 2 of 4, there's been no comment. That alone might help like trigger certain, oh, I've been meaning to comment on that. Let me do that before it closes. Certainly a warning prior to closing the work.
So
You're
what, go ahead.
You're envisioning a bot that comments on the GitHub issue, or that like just pings us?
I don't know exactly what I'm envisioning. I guess I was saying GitHub issue, but I realized that might be not noticed. By the way, Josh, I don't know if you're muted or what, but I'm not hearing you. You don't look muted. I guess it could also be on Zulip, which might be more effective.
I'm on mute. We could also potentially at T-Lang on Zulip. But can I suggest as a very minor point of order that I think we might be a little off topic of the notion of participation and path towards membership, and we should get back. We have about 11 minutes left. We should talk about like what's the next step for the notion of non-Lang team liaisons and creating this kind of path. Can we get some consensus on the call or off the call about whether this is a reasonable strategy going forward?
I personally think non-Lang team liaison sounds like a really great idea. I am wondering about this very recent thing that Nico brought up about some way of collecting together all of either the leads, or I was thinking liaisons, but some collection of non-members who are, you know, sort of being primed for membership. I was wondering whether that, like, where do you get the most benefit there in terms of if you did collect all the leads into a group, okay, what's the benefit they see of that in terms of they each have their own individual projects they're interested in? Why would they want to get pinged all together on something unless it's about to discuss like, oh, here's how I managed to trick the Lang team into accepting my proposal. I'm kidding, of course, but you know, I'm not sure. In some ways, collecting the liaisons together, I could see potentially more value in terms of them actually sharing knowledge about, I don't know, how to do the job effectively.
Right. There's a certain amount of meta here of like process tips and process steps and similar. I don't know if there's a lot of value, but I think if there were, it would be something like that.
So I was thinking, yeah, I was thinking more like recognition, but they already get that because they're already on the website in that role. And the thing I'm concerned about is exactly this thing I brought up in the beginning of like, I don't want it to be a sort of empty role where we can't decide when you should be still in it or not or something. Like I think in the compiler team contributors, it actually is tied to specific things like doing reviews. And although we haven't done a lot of audits, in principle, I'm supposed to. We sort of said after like 6 months of inactivity, we can, where you haven't been doing reviews and stuff, we can take you out from this and put you in the alumni. But I guess it might be something like that, right? Like maybe it's people who are leading and liaisoning, and we recognize that because that's a really valuable, or like facilitating, that's a valuable service. And if at some point you kind of stop doing that, then, um, we can remove you from that group and move you to alumni. Actually, they're kind of.
So another thought I just had is, a reason to have people on a list is for no other reason is to have the place to ping them for meet. Like these are people we expect to like be at least notified the meeting's going on. Maybe they're not necessarily required to, but they might like to know and potentially be in the background or foreground. That's potentially of interest to the liaisons again. Possibly also leads.
That's a good place to ping if we want to get like updates on which project groups are still active and which project groups are a little moribund.
I think Leah's, yeah. I feel like that's an interesting role. I don't know. Maybe we should wait till we have people who are doing it, but I could imagine that there's a set of people who are like liaison, and it's just kind of a fun thing for them to do as a way to participate in the project. But this first step, I guess, is, as Josh mentioned, is just starting to do that at all. Broadening the role of liaison beyond it has to be a team member towards someone whose job is to bring it to the meetings and keep the team up to date. Let's ask this question. Do we feel, on that note, like, is there a problem if there's some project group that has no team member sort of active? At some point, we're going to have some need to like vote on an RFC or something, which I think it's probably okay, but just only for, I wouldn't, projects of core importance, I don't think that's a great fit.
It'll definitely be frustrating to the people on the project if we end up, saying no to something that none of us have participated on and they've worked on for a while, right?
Yes, probably. But I would hope that that would come like, I guess it's like if the liaison's doing a good job, then hopefully that negative feedback is coming a bit earlier, and that might be a time to get more involved if it's like, this isn't quite going how we thought it was going.
Right. I also think that when we have a non-Lang team liaison, that is all the more reason where we need to have very clear requirements and expectations up front for what the guidance is for the project group, like a clear charter, clear requirements, etc. In cases where we're being more exploratory, where we're saying, hey, we're not even sure what the requirements are yet, and we need some research done in order to even get as far as defining requirements, it may be more important to have on or somebody with a lot of language design sense actively participating so that it's more likely to be successful.
Right. So I think that's another point is we wouldn't just allow arbitrary, the liaisons are not like arbitrary people, but it should be people that we've sort of got experience with. And so they're sort of to some extent, they are potentially trialing team members. And so it's kind of almost like, I think the point of having clearer, like the more we can say what our expectations are, especially for a liaison role in this case, if it's the better it'll be. Okay. Well, it seems like nobody objects to the core principle.
What are the actual action items at this point then?
I think the action items are to convert some of these notes into like a forged document or something, or like try to write up these expectations we're talking about, probably roughly in the form they have here for now. And then we can talk offline about who some of those people might be.
Something like the design notes in the Lang team repository seems like a good place to put like an edited subset of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to put this, well, I'll put these minutes in there, but I think we would want some, it would be nice if when you visited, I still don't know how I think all these web pages should balance out, but possibly this one, there was like a expectations of a Lang team member, like
Yeah, absolutely.
talked about what liaisons are and what their expectations are for them and how we choose them and so on.
I think it's also worth, in terms of next steps, mentioning if there are specific people that we think might be good candidates for non-Lang team liaisons, we should have a discussion about that in private and go over like demonstrated experience, what we've seen, etc. And like maybe doing that on the T-Lang private Zulip stream might be a good place to do that and discuss potential potential liaisons to do a trial run with.
Yeah.
Do you expect us to handpick this group of people, or do you expect them to sort of us to encourage people to put themselves forward as well, in addition to us trying to handpick people?
I would think a little bit of both. Like
Right.
I would think that people might reach out and say, I'm interested in this, how do I do that? That happens sometimes. And maybe we can encourage people that if they have questions or think they might like to do this role to reach out to leads or something. And I think though, I would expect that you don't necessarily have to have led a project group, but you couldn't come out of nowhere. Like if someone we don't know at all, we would say, actually, that's a little early for that. Like, why don't you start getting involved in one of these active project groups or something like that. I'm just checking the okay, good. So the private stream does have the setting that new members can only see messages sent after they join, which is good. So it's a decent place to have conversations about people.
Sounds good.
Okay, although you can change that setting. Although I think if you change that setting, the history gets wiped. I'm not sure. Anyway,
I think changing that setting requires being an admin, not just a Lang team member, right?
it does. It does. All right. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal anyway. It's not historically. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. I guess we'll call.
Thanks. This is great. Bye.
Thanks, Nico.